I almost made this video inside, but that was just the worst idea. So we're walking to Tompkins Square Park. We're going to talk about tech. Today, smartphone addiction. Now, I hesitated to upload this video because after having worked with this particular strategy for about 2 months, I found that it doesn't solve the problem of smartphone addiction, which is, I think, fine. And actually, I realized probably more realistic to open the video with this. Smartphone addiction is a huge problem for a lot of people for lots of reasons, not least of which is smartphones are designed to be addicting because that's how they make money for the people who design apps for them. So I don't watch this video expecting like a perfect solution for forever. This is just one use case that for me was kind of useful. And there have been a few environments where making this using this tactic helped, and so I'm posting this in the hopes that this will be helpful to at least a couple more people than me. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to do is talk about 2 techniques that did not work for me. One is just like deleting lots of apps that I don't use and in the hopes that I will not use them. Turns out this doesn't work because I just re-download them all the time. I know it's sad, it's pathetic, but that's just like how a lot of people are with particular apps. The second possible solution is buying one of these minimalist phones. And I found that that solution doesn't work either. I didn't buy one, but I looked into a lot of the possible solutions. It's not going to work for what I need, right? There are these phones on the market that are like, they just text and they just call. And it's like, that's a great idea in principle. But the problem is I need a lot of that other stuff. Like I need to get around, I need to use the map sometimes, I need to use mobile banking sometimes. There's a lot of use cases where actually like using the smartphone functionality is kind of necessary for modern life. And I think a lot of smartphone addiction solutions don't recognize that. So recognizing that we fail at willpower a lot and that these minimalist phone solutions don't work, the solution that I have been using for some cases, doesn't work in all cases, as I've said before, is my solution is this. I have a SIM swapping tool on my keychain, and I have multiple phones. And that sounds bananas on the first take, but let me explain why it is useful for a couple of things. The shortest possible version is that I have a social media phone and I have a functional phone. On my social media phone, I use the internet, I have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that jazz, and I check email. And then on the other phone, I have no email. I have Safari hidden away inside a folder on the furthest screen away. And I have maps, I have texting and calling, and that's it. I actually have Spotify on there too for runs and stuff if I want. But that's the distraction-free phone. And I use that phone when I need a break from the social media world. And that is literally the use case. And I'm leaving it in that deliberately vague language because I don't use it every day. I don't use it every couple of, there are people who have better routines than me that can maybe build routines around this, which I totally recommend. But for me, there are times in my life when I just need a break from all of that connection to the rest of the world, and I pull out the SIM tool, I swap my SIM into an older phone, and I go from there. For some reason, for me, as like a person who needs like physical tools and I like in the physical world, I'm a haptic feedback kind of guy, that helps me. It's a mental cue, oh, I'm on my physical phone. And a particularly liberating feeling that comes from this is I can literally leave that device at home. And that is an awesome reason that I like using this dual phone solution, even though it's not elegant by any stretch of the imagination. And there's a couple other reasons why I like this, and I want to just give you a couple use cases that are like I didn't expect. If you have one phone that you use for everything, including social media, you actually end up doing this really destructive thing, which I don't like, which is you go to bed and the last thing that you touch is your phone, and you wake up and the first thing you touch is your phone because it's your alarm. If you switch to this dual SIM situation, or this SIM swapping situation rather, then you have the ability to turn your social media phone off as part of your bedtime routine. And that has proven to be an incredibly nice thing, and it leads to an interesting perk, which is you wake up in the morning and your first question is not, do I check my social media or not? And if your phone is off, you have this physical cue to yourself, which is, okay, I have this other phone in my hands, my distraction-free phone. And if I want to turn that other phone on and check the socials, then you can. But it's this extra step in the mornings. And it's not going to stop you every morning from checking your social media. That's not the point. But what it does is it creates this interesting mental space in the morning that you have as a result of you didn't start the day with social media in your hand. The very first thing that you did in the morning was not pick up your device that connects you to the rest of the world. So that's one use case that I think is really interesting, the evening routine and the morning routine. A second use case that I think is really interesting is the use case of going out. If you want to go out, you want to enjoy time with your friends, you want to go out, you want to go to a bar, a lot of times I have a tendency to, when I'm in a public place and I have a moment's nervousness, just phone comes out. If you leave that phone at home, you're less likely to do that. You're more likely to start a conversation. I'm Midwestern, so I start conversations all the time, but I appreciate that as a secondary use case. And the third use case is a very weird techie sort of use case that people might appreciate, that might depend on your cell phone plan, but it's carrying both phones at once. And this is probably the most ridiculous case, but it's also one of the cases that I think a lot of people who are watching these kinds of videos will find useful. If tethering is on your mobile plan, which I love having on mine, I think it's totally worth the money, you can bring both phones. And if you need to be using like your dual authentication on your smartphone, your social media phone, then you have that with you. You tether to your other phone, you look up whatever you need to look up, and then when you're done with social media, you turn that phone off and you throw it in your backpack. This proves to be a very useful modular during the day kind of in-day cue for like, I'm online, I'm offline, I'm online, I'm offline, all while maintaining like an appropriate level of connectedness for the 21st century, having your phone on, having, texting if you need it, etc. And the reason I bring it up is it's so modular, and you can use this in all these different ways. You can have email on both phones if you need. You can have email on only one if you need. You can have email on neither if you want, and only on a computer. It just creates this level of separation. Okay, so hopefully that was somewhat useful to some of you. I find this technique useful in like certain use cases like I've described. There's a couple more use cases, but I thought I would share it with you today. Hope your day is awesome. Subscribe if you're new. Like if you're new. Also, apparently the subscribe button doesn't mean anything anymore because of YouTube's algorithm. So just like it if you thought it was cool or useful. Talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.